Hello, my name is Sonia, and today we're going to learn a crocheted ribbing technique using slip stitches. So I have a sample right here of a hat that I made. It's got a nice wide ribbing. As you can see, it's really stretchy, and this ribbing was made using slip stitches. And I like to use slip stitches a lot with different ribbings, and I'll show some other ribbing in other videos as well. But we're going to do a basic one today. So we are going to get started, and a lot of people think that slip stitching is just for working in the round for joining, but you can actually use it as a stitch all by itself. You can create all kinds of neat things using slip stitches. But I'm going to show you a pretty much a straightforward technique with slip stitches. There's other ones, but this is pretty much a basic one. So we are going to work a chain of 7. So I have 7 chains. I'm using worsted weight yarn, and I have a size 5mm or an H hook. And I do recommend using a hook that has a little bit of a pointier end when you're doing slip stitching. It just makes it a little bit easier. And I also recommend, especially if you've not done a lot of this technique, is using solid colored yarn in a light color. It's just easier to see your stitches. Now the nice thing is we will be working this technique in rows, so you're probably wondering, how am I going to be able to incorporate this into the round? And you can do it very easily. I use this a lot when working in the round, and and you work in rows and rounds. So I'll show you how to do that. And the nice thing is you can determine how wide you want your ribbing. So let's say if this was going to be a hat band, you can figure out how wide you want it. If you want it this wide or you want it wider, you just make as many chains until you have your desired width of your ribbing. So we are going to work in the back of the chain, and that means all these little bumps, you're going to insert your hook in those bumps. So we are going to skip the first chain and work in the second one, and you're just going to make a regular slip stitch working in the back bump. And I just recommend keeping your tension pretty loose, not super loose, but you don't want to get tight when you're doing this. And that's where a lot of people kind of go wrong. They get too tight when they're slip stitching across, and then as they get frustrated and just kind of want to throw their hook and say forget it. So my advice is just to be relaxed and just make sure your tension's not too tight. So you're just going to work one slip stitch in each bump of your chain, the back of your chain, all the way across. And we should have 6. Oops. Don't think I'm in the back bump of that last chain there. Where is it? There we go. Alright, so now we've worked one slip stitch in each chain. So we should have 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now it's important when you're slip stitching to really know how to read your work. And what I mean by that is you really want to know what your stitches look like, how they're made up, the components of your stitches. It helps you with counting. It just helps you to spot mistakes or just to know that you're doing it right. A lot of people, they just kind of crochet along and they don't really know how to count or anything. So I think it's important to know how to read your work, especially when working in slip stitches. So we've completed one row and we're going to turn. But before we do that, I like to place a stitch marker because our next row we're going to work in back loops only. And it can be tricky when you're turning of where to insert your hook because the stitch is really crunched up and short, so a lot of people get confused. So what I like to do is when you're looking at this on its side, it does look like a row of chains right on top. So this would be the back loop, this would be the front loop. So what you would want to do is you want to place a stitch marker in that front loop, And I'm just using a scrap piece of yarn, my favorite stitch markers, cheap and easy. And just put it right there to mark that front loop, because when you chain one and turn, you're going to know I need to work in this stitch and then in all of the stitches next to it. So it's just a little trick that I like to do. So we're going to chain one and we're going to turn. So my stitch is marked. I already know where to place my hook. I'm going to pull that guy out of there. And you're going to slip stitch across. So you can see this is where we're going to need to put our hook. So it does help to not have your work like this, to have your work more like this, so that you know where to place your hook. And so we're working just in back loops only, all the way across. And row 1 in all the odd rows is going to be the right side. So if you were working your ribbing, you'll know that all of your odd rows is the right side. So we're in row 2, so this is the wrong side. So we've completed row 2. So you would chain 1. Now if you're confused, again, you can place your stitch marker right here. I'm not going to do that. I've done this so many times that I'm very familiar with the stitch, so just want to get cracking here and stitch across. And you'll just continue to work across until you work as many rows as needed. That's another reason why I like this technique, is it is a little bit more time consuming, but if you're making, let's say, a hat for yourself, you can really make the band perfect to fit you. So you would just work as many rows as needed until it fits around your head comfortably, and you'd be like, okay, I'm done. Now sometimes you'll see it can be easy to miss the last stitch, especially as you get going. So you really, again, want to be counting, you want to keep track. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I know this is number 6. It's there. You don't want to forget it, because then your ribbing is going to be all screwed up. So this is the right side here. You can see it looks just a little bit different. It looks a little bit neater and tidier. Okay, I've worked a couple rows of ribbing, and this is the right side. And I'm going to show you how you can incorporate this into the round. There's the wrong side. They look almost identical. But anyway, to get this into a circle, because, you know, if you want to have this as a hat, or even like, let's say this was for a baby sweater or something like that, you know, you want to turn it into a circle. Now I try to avoid sewing. A lot of people don't like sewing, so you can certainly sew it together, but this way creates almost an invisible seam, so you don't have to sew. So what you're going to do is you're going to chain 1, you're going to turn. So this is your wrong side. You're going to bring up the end, and see it. This is the underside of the chain. We worked in the back bump, so when you do that, it mimics how you would normally work. So this side looks almost the same as that side. So what you're going to do is you're going to insert your hook into the front loop of this row here. So just like that. And you're going to insert your hook into the back loop of your current row. So you're going to have 3 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over, and you're going to pull through all 3. and you've made one stitch, and you're going to continue to do that all the way across. So front loop, so this would be the end of row 1, and then this is the end of your last row. So the end of row 1 is front loops, back loops is the end of your current row. So you're just going to slip stitch these guys all the way across. So as you can see, it does take a little bit of patience, but it really does make a really nice ribbing. So I think it's worth it. Alright, so we've slip stitched all the way across, and you can see it almost, blends in pretty well. So now we've created a circle, so you can easily build off of this. So let's say if this was a little hat, we could just do a single crochet. I like to chain 1 and then just work a single crocheted stitch right in there. And it's nice to work in, it looks like a V right here. You can insert your hook right in the middle of that, and it just makes it look nice and neat and tidy. And you would work as many single crochet as you would need to. You can certainly work in the middle, like in here you can insert a single crochet. So if you're doing this, I do recommend keeping the same color. So let's say you wanted to make stripes. Before you would start your striping, have this, as you're setting up your round, have this be the same color as your ribbing. And then if you wanted to stripe, then have the next row, because it just looks a little neater and makes it look a little bit more uniform. So that is a crocheted ribbing technique using slip stitching. Thank you so much for watching.